guys, and welcome to today's Los Blancos podcast. Today we'll be discussing Trent Alexander-Arnold, a new Real Madrid signing, coming on a free transfer from Liverpool this summer. Just before the Club World Cup, we did pay an extra 10 million to have him for the Club World Cup. There's been a little bit of talk about that, whether it was actually worth it to sign him essentially for a couple games, 6 games, let's say 6-7 games. Maybe that wasn't worth it, but I think nonetheless we have just signed probably the best right back in world football, and if not one of the best right backs of all time already. In terms of his offensive talent is unmatched. He's on a level that's just unmatched to a lot of football players. So overall, what are your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, so like you said, he's the best. He's known as the best, or if not the best, he's known as one of the best. It's not just, guys are saying that, there are a lot of flaws and it's not the best deal for Madrid. But I can assure you that, the positives, far outweigh the negatives. In every deal this window, the positives for Madrid has outweighed the negatives. I think him coming to Madrid is going to help us so much. Like you said, he's the best in the world. There are other defenders that we can get to. I'm sure later on today that can maybe do and have other aspects of the game that's better than him, but in terms of what he offers, he is the best at it. Regardless, you can mention any other name that's top there. There are many positives that we can also say about the Trent deal, despite the other comments that people will say.
I mean, let's start by talking about the fullback situation at Real Madrid, because it's very obvious that this is where Real Madrid lacks when you compare it to some of the best clubs around Europe right now. You look at Barcelona, and whenever we play Barcelona always have an overload against Real Madrid, and it's because of the fullbacks. They have Balde, they have Koundé, who are both really capable on the ball and who are able to carry out overloads, so that it looks like Real Madrid have essentially one less man than Barcelona a lot of the time. So I think bringing in this guy will help us a lot in possession, because if we look at Real Madrid's current fullback situation, Ferland Mendy and Lucas Vázquez, for the last season, just really didn't offer us anything. A lot of the times when it went to Lucas Vázquez, that's when the possession ends. He often lost the ball at that point, and we just really couldn't carry on. So when we get Trent, that's an extra weapon. That's a guy who defenders are gonna have to look out for, and a lot of the times you can just stay off Lucas Vázquez because he's not gonna do anything. His crossing has been really bad. When you got Trent, you have to stretch that defense. You have to make sure that you've got a guy covering him at all times, so that Trent can't just pick a pass out perfectly to one of the attackers. So I think that automatically makes a huge difference. Now, that being said, Dani Carvajal would have also made a big difference in that regard as well. So, I can't exactly say that Trent's the only one who would have made that big difference, but Trent, it brings us something that no other fullback in world football can bring in, is that beautiful right foot, that ability to play whatever pass he wants. There's not many footballers in the world that has the technical ability of Trent, that has the ability to pick a pass like Trent. And it's not just crossing. I know our heading of the ball in this team is quite bad, but it's the passes. A lot of the times it gets wasted at Liverpool because it goes to Darwin Núñez or something. But if he's playing that pass in behind Kylian Mbappe, there's a huge versatility that Trent's got in his locker. It's not just crosses into the box. He can play a beautiful pass in behind. He can make a nice through ball. He can do stuff like that, which is perfect for this team, which a lot of the times it does lack a bit of edge, a little bit of critical thinking in the final third. Finding that that killer pass, I think it does lack, and I think Trent a lot of the time can make that difference. So I think that immediately improves your team offensively. When we've looked a lot of the times we've looked a bit lackluster in that regard. So what are your thoughts in possession bringing in Trent?
So, out of in possession, we didn't really have much of a plan in my opinion. So, regardless of the names who's there, we didn't have much of a plan at fullback, or at all if I'm being honest, So despite the poor performances, it's both on the manager and on the players, but but of course, what Trent can do in attack, the passing from deep, whether it's to get the ball forward or to maybe play those passes into midfield before the final pass. I think he has the technique and the ability and the experience to do so because he's been doing it his entire career. So I think this is something that Madrid really needed. You can even argue and say that there are many better options than him in terms of how other fullbacks will be balanced. Let's say, for example, like Hakimi, maybe. Well, I think in terms of what he does, I think it's his Madrid. So, for example, Hakimi is known for like his energy. How you can get up and down the flank. I think Madrid have players who can do that. Like, for example, Valverde, who normally is on the right flank. So I think when you have someone like Trent who gives you something different than what the team misses, passing from deep, the assists, who can play those final balls into the box, for the attacking players, I think we don't have that. Whereas the other options are good and maybe sometimes more balanced, they don't have what we should need. And I think that's what makes this deal, better than just a market opportunity. These players are good, but Trent gives Madrid something that we lacked all of last season. And of course, we can mitigate other issues, by being a bit more balanced and organized as a team. But in terms of what he does in attack, it more than compensates for his defending, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we'll talk about defending in a bit. But I think the next point I want to make is Toni Kroos, and obviously we didn't replace him last year, and it does look like we're going to replace him this year potentially with Angelo Stiller. We'll see what happens with that a little bit later on in the transfer market. But I think it's a huge addition. This, I think, in replacing Toni Kroos, or at least getting a little bit of what he had before. I think one of the things we've discussed in the past is when we lose someone like Toni Kroos or Luka Modric, it's not about replacing it 1-1. It's about spreading it across the team so that you feel that effect less, because you can't find a player like Toni Kroos in the market. No other team in the world of football had Toni Kroos apart from Real Madrid, so you're not going to find Toni Kroos anywhere else. It's about replacing him elsewhere, and I think Trent can bring you some of what Toni Kroos did, especially with, like I said, with those killer passes that that really penetrate a defense. That I think it can really make a big difference. I'm looking at his stats right now, right, and his pass completion in terms of long range passes, that's amongst what Toni Kroos did before at Real Madrid. Same with his progressive passes, he's in the top 1% for that. Same with his key passes, he's in the top 7%. Passes into the final third, passes into the penalty area, all in the top 1%. So I think you see the progressive passing from Trent is on the level of Toni Kroos, and I get it's from a different position, but at Real Madrid, you would feel like either way. I think Alexander-Arnold would be in a little bit in the deeper position, and I feel like he would be playing a bit of a quarterback role like Toni Kroos did. So I think it's similar here. I think we need someone like Trent, who is one of the best passers in world football, and I think he can definitely bring what Toni Kroos did, in my opinion. So I think that's the thing I think excites me the most about this signing, is the fact that I think not only are we getting this brilliant technician, but we are finally getting a Toni Kroos replacement in this player. And I think the thing that really stood out to me most this season was the fact that we brought in someone like Dani Ceballos into the first team, who can replicate a little bit, just a little bit, not even so much of what Toni Kroos did, but just did a little bit, and that it made such a drastic change to Real Madrid's performances. So I think someone like Trent, as opposed to Dani Ceballos, I think that can make a huge difference to this team and how they play. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Trent potentially replacing Toni Kroos?
It's not just him, that has the task of replacing Tony. There are so many players, that can come together to make it into one final puzzle, in my opinion. But what he does, like we said before, what he does, what he's going to contribute is so much better than what other fullbacks has, because it's what the team needs. We need those passes from deep. We need those players who can be effective and build up. So sometimes Madrid this season has looked so lost in terms of what they need to do, or players not making the passes. That's looks so simple on TV. Yes, it's difficult. The passes that you see on TV, we can see it because it's so clear to us. But on the field, it's difficult. And Madrid missed that this season so many times. And Mbappe, Vinicius made decent moves in behind the defense, and we just didn't have the talent or ability to unlock them, and now we do. You know, this is exactly what Madrid needs. So, for example, we know it's not Toni Kroos' direct replacement. He's not going to play midfield, but if you come together and make one team with good balance, and we have players who have the skills to make passes and confident on the ball. I think step by step we're going to replace him to an extent, and it's going to work out for the team in the long term. And it's good that, in my opinion, I think it's good that he's coming in now under a new manager. When his skills can be utilized, yes, and the balance in the team can be helped out in the long term.
For sure, and I think I want to talk about his positioning a little bit here now, and what role he should play for Real Madrid next season, because Real Madrid's right backs typically, we want them high and wide. We want them, playing a right wing position almost when we're attacking. With Trent, he can do a bunch of things. You can ask Trent to do a bunch of things, and he's so technically capable that he can do anything that you would want him to. So I think there's three possibilities that you could ask Trent to do here. One is the high and wide thing, like I said before, like Dani Carvajal does. I think here you can obviously get the most out of his crossing, where he's just going to be fantastic, and obviously it's going to drag the defenses out wide. It's going to provide a bit more space for some guys like Mbappe and Vinicius to score some goals. And, you're obviously going to take advantage. Obviously, the main problem with this, though, Trent's crosses, who are they going to? They're not going to anyone, right? At the end of the day, none of those guys up front, apart from Bellingham, are going to head the ball. So I feel like a bit of that is going to be wasted if we play Trent like that. And unless we bring in someone like Ante Budimir, who we've been talking about as well, that could be a possibility. I think that could be wasted otherwise. The next option is to play him like inverted, make him cut in, play him part of the midfield. In this situation, you're talking about Fede essentially playing right back in possession, providing that high and wide stuff. I think I like this more, because I think it will give you the opportunity for Trent to make those killer balls, like we said before, and it also gets the most out of Fede Valverde as well. I think Fede is best when he is providing the width. I think that's when I like Fede the most, when he's on the right hand side rather than in the midfield. I prefer when Fede's doing that role, because I feel like Fede can influence the game a little bit more in possession. Fede can drive the ball as much as you want from the right, but it's a little bit harder to do that from the midfield. So you're maximising what Trent can do as well as Federico Valverde. So I think this is my favourite. And then the final option is to have Trent playing the quarterback role, like I said, that Toni Kroos did, playing them a little bit deeper, practically in between the two centre backs. I think this is also a possibility if we need to dictate a game against Alaves in La Liga. I think this could be a possibility. He's so fantastic on the ball that he can do this role. The only problem with this, I think, is you're not getting him higher up the pitch, and I think that could be a little bit of an issue. Also, I think positioning around him, you also want Tchouaméni to potentially influence games a little bit more next season as well, and then what happens to Camavinga and stuff. So I think this could provide a little bit more complication as well. So I like the second one the most, where he's inverted. What about you? Which one do you prefer out of those options, or do you have another option that we have?
Yeah, I must say that I 100% agree with what you're saying because, for example, I think Madrid, the higher he is up the pitch, it's going to limit him a bit because, for example, Madrid don't have the players for us to be spamming crosses into the penalty box. In my opinion, we don't have the players who can do that. I think we were lucky that in years gone that our attack, had players who could head the ball. The BBC, Bale, Benzema, and Cristiano, they all could have had the ball. So despite their ability and being the best attacking three in the world, whether like in terms of their skill set and of their ability, they could have all had the ball. So we could have gotten away with just sending crosses into the box if we are losing, if you're dribbling points. Even Sergio Ramos on deep, and even so when they all left, I think we missed that, but last season, when the final one left, in terms of Benzema, I think we got Bellingham. This couple of seasons ago, we got Bellingham, and he kind of compensated for that along with Joselu. But this season, I think it was more in effect where we don't have the players to have a fullback who, despite how good he is, sending in those dangerous balls. We're not going to win many, and even though they might make good runs in behind, they may not have the heading ability to score these goals. So the deeper he is, I think it's better, but it's according to the game state. I think we need players who can adapt to the game state, and I think that's the important thing for him. I think he can adapt to whether it's high up the pitch or deep. I think what Madrid needs and what Madrid now has are players who are skilled enough to perform multiple functions and perform the same task in different positions on the pitch, and I think he's a skilled enough footballer to do so. And it's, of course, the cohesion between him and Valverde, and even the midfield, like for example, Tchouaméni and Bellingham is expected to, give us an extra boost, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to talk about the cohesion between him and Valverde actually in particular, because a lot has been made about his defence, and personally, this is one of the main problems I have with Trent is Real Madrid have never had this type of right back where our right backs have been modest. They haven't been exactly this star. We've obviously had at left back we had Marcelo, we had Roberto Carlos, but at right back it's guys like Dani Carvajal, and guys like Michel Salgado. We've had Arbeloa as well. These aren't guys who are stars. So I think I had a little bit of caution in terms of his defensive ability. So I went and looked at the stats, and actually his stats aren't too bad. Like in terms of his the amount of dribblers he's tackling, he's in the top 5%. His tackles per game in the top 15%, which is it's not like world class, but it's pretty solid. And same with his tackles one, top 10%. Again, same thing. It's pretty solid. Like these are solid stats. Like there is obviously I don't want him. He's not a lockdown defender, and we know this. We've seen this so many times. We've seen him play against Vinicius. We've seen him play against Kvaratskhelia, and he's been cooked. We know that, but a lot of defenders are in that situation, and so it's on us for us to be able to cover him. We need to make sure that we have a tactic, a game plan to if we're playing a guy like Kvaratskhelia who will be able to cook him. We need to have a game plan for that type of matchup. So I think this is where Fede comes in. I think Fede, in terms of that matchup, he's obviously got the physical ability, the athletic ability to match. So I think, when Trent had his best season, in my opinion, it was 1920. I think he was absolutely fantastic that season, and a lot of that season he had Henderson covering for him. He had Van Dijk, and he had Henderson, he had Fabinho, he had all these guys who had, there to cover for him defensively when he's playing up against a difficult matchup. So I think something similar when we've got the guys like Fede, we've got guys like Tchouaméni, we've got guys like Asensio. I think is a really good fit for this role. I think that could really help. I think a lot of this we need to try and mitigate, but I think Trent's defensive ability has been totally just like his reputation, his defensive reputation has been totally shot to pieces. We all think he's a horrible defender, but he's not too bad. Like he can get by, he can pass by, and he definitely won't be some cone like Lucas Vasquez is every week. So I think automatically you upgrade, and I think he'll be okay. But you do need to game plan for big games when you're playing against guys like Kvaratskhelia. So I think, yeah, what are your thoughts on Trent's defensive ability? Do you have any worries about it?
Like you said, when he had his best seasons, it's all down to having a good team around him, and I think a good team and a good structure would help a lot. So if you can have that, I'm not going to be overly concerned. And if I'm being honest, and it's not that he's a bad defender. He just maybe need to change some of his actions and his mentality and his attitude towards defending, and it's going to be okay. I think there are flaws, but he has to understand that one simple moment or mistake, can cost you big titles. That's what Tuchel said about his defending. So I think the coaches that he has or had it in the last year is correct about him, and there's some attitudes he needs to change and have a more positive approach towards 1v1 defending, or be a little more concentrated. Because, for example, in the ET, because we want him on the field, especially in the if let's say, for example, we're winning 1-0, it's minute 70. We don't want the first option to be, okay, let's take out Trent Alexander-Arnold because he's a liability defensively. We have to say, okay, let's use him to get the ball forward, because that's when we are dangerous in counterattacks. So we have to think like that, But in some instances, we might think to ourselves, okay, well, wow, this guy is struggling. Let's bring on someone else. Let's put Valverde in, and or let's take him off for Danny Carvajal because he's better defensively. I think he has to have a better attitude towards defending. Otherwise, that's what the thinking would be, And so I think we just have to have a good structure, but he as well need to have a better attitude towards defending, and hopefully Xabi Alonso can assist in that to an extent, or even have a structure to mitigate it.
Yeah, I think once again, like this will a lot of this will come down to what formation we're using next year. If it's a back five, then you've automatically got that structure to kind of compensate. But if it's a back four, you're gonna have to fix something. You're gonna have to find something. You're gonna have to sort a system out where you can compensate for his lack of positioning and his awareness. I think his awareness is the main issue, in my opinion. It's not his one-on-one defending, although that can also be an issue. I think his awareness, he can sometimes get lost, as we saw in the Champions League final a couple of years ago. I think it can be okay though, so I think it's completely fine. I did want to talk about the distribution as well, because we struggled a lot this season in terms of our playing out from the back. He comes in, he's automatically a huge addition to helping us play out from the back because of his technical ability. We've talked about this already. So I think that's also a huge thing. But I also want to talk about all the other things he can help us with in terms of his free kicks and his set pieces. This season has been just totally useless. We've been totally useless from corners. A lot of the times it's been Rodrigo or Modric taking the corners. And as much as I love those two players, the corner delivery just been completely useless. It hasn't been good enough. And guys like Tchouaméni, guys like Rudiger haven't been able to get their heads on the ball enough. So I think automatically, if you have extra options from set pieces, like Arda and Trent next season, I think that automatically upgrades, and you get the ability to score from different positions. And we've seen Mbappe taking some free kicks and actually scoring some free kicks this season. But I think if Trent comes in, that's automatically your free kick taker. He's just a fantastic free kick taker. So you've added a few goals there as well. So I think that's a huge addition in that sense as well. So I think I'm happy with those extra goals. Is there anything else you got to say about Trent, or any other places you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think it's just more into waiting to analyze how he plays now, what's going on. I think that's important. We have to take it step by step with him. We have to know what way the manager is going to use him before we analyze a bit further. But I must say, finally, I know I touched on it before, but like you said, the set pieces, the passing from deep, everything, something that we missed. And like I said, we lacked that. Last season we missed it last season. So if we sign in a player who can do that, then that's exactly what we need. As good as Hakimi is, he doesn't have those abilities like Trent. And we can offer what Hakimi does in other places on the pitch, like with Valverde and Carreras, if he comes, or maybe energy on the left flank from someone else. It's all about finding the balance. And I think with him, an excellent footballer, added to the squad, it's a win for Madrid. As long as we find the balance. So, for example, I believe that the transfer targets that we're looking at is good. And it's just positive things so far in terms of the transfer window. In my opinion, I'm just looking forward to seeing how he plays, and it's going to be a good shock to Madrid fans, compared to what we had last season. It's better than last season. The more options, the better. We have two excellent fullbacks in Carvajal and Trent, and let's see. Fortea sometimes, because most likely he's going to be with Castilla because Arbeloa is promoted and Raul is gone. So, we have good fullback options on that side for now, and let's see how it develops.
Yeah, and actually I forgot to ask you about one thing. 10 million paid, do you think it's worth it? Because there's been a lot of information about this. I think I want to clear something up as well. We have signed him for the whole of the Club World Cup. Although, we would have got him for July 1st, which should have been the second half of the Club World Cup, beyond the group stage. The first three group matches, let me start again. The first three group matches are before July the 1st, when he officially joins us. However, in order for Trent to play the whole tournament, we have to register him before that. So ultimately, we have paid 10 million not only for those 3 games in which he would have been signed before, but the whole tournament. So I think we need to make that very, very clear. We haven't just signed him for 3 games; we've signed him for the whole tournament. I do want to say I think it's worth it. Like 10 million for the best fullback in the world, and ultimately, if we go ahead and win the Club World Cup, that's a lot more money than just 10 million. So I really don't care. Like at the end of the day, it's like 10 million. Who cares? Like, give Liverpool 10 million, let them have it. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. But what do you think about the 10 million we paid for him?
Yeah, price money, the commercial point of view as well. It's football, and we will make it back. Of course, the way he's integrated into the team as well, the better as well from a football and sporting aspect. So from the financial side, the money would be made. We would recover the money, and of course, from the sporting aspect as well, the earlier he's integrated into the squad, the better, in my opinion. So 10 million, it would have been better if maybe we paid 20, 30 to have him in 6 months earlier. But it's never too late, and we can win upwards of 100. With him in the squad for this competition. So like I said earlier, the better from both a sporting and a financial point of view.
Yeah. So that's Xabi Alonso locked in. That's Danehausen locked in. That's Trent Alexander locked in. Now we're waiting for a couple more. We'll hopefully get Alvaro Carreras in the next week. We'll hopefully get Franco Mastunono in the next week. We'll hopefully get Angelo Stiller soon enough as well. And potentially Ante Budimir also is starting to heat up a little bit. So, hopefully a few more signings coming along. And, if we sign all those guys, then it's absolutely been a 10 out of 10 window, 11 out of 10 window in my opinion. I wouldn't have expected this from Real Madrid, but, we're coming in with a vengeance ultimately. So I'm very, very happy. And if, we're going to take down PSG and what they're building over there. I think this is a very, very promising start. So I'm very happy with how the window's gone so far, and hopefully it can continue. So that's all I've got to say. Welcome Trent Alexander-Arnold to Real Madrid, and we'll discuss this, obviously as the season progresses, as the Club World Cup comes along. We'll discuss this. So yeah, that's it from me today, and that's it from Sean today. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.